Right after school got out in June, my family and I began our drive to Colorado so that I could participate in the Curious and Passionate Preacher Conference, which was hosted by Calvin Seminary's Center for Excellence in Preaching. And the stipulation of this conference was that I bring my family with me. And so that in the morning I went to class, and in the afternoon and evening we were free to enjoy time together as a family at the YMCA Snow Mountain Ranch. Now our time was filled with hiking and with summer tubing and archery and swimming and so much more. And one afternoon we went on a beaver hike. And we strolled along at a pace that the 6-year-olds set in our group and looking for evidence of beavers. So we were looking at the stream that we were hiking along to see where we might see evidence of beavers. We were looking at the trees to see where they might have chewed down a tree and that telltale sign of a pencil shape where the beaver has chewed down the tree. And along the way, we would stop and inspect various things in nature. The plants, the flowers, the moose that we saw across the way, and eventually we made our way to the spot where there was a beaver dam, where you could see that the beavers had been hard at work taking those logs that they had cut and using their tails to slap the mud together to build that dam so that on one side was still water and on the other side the babbling creek. And it was in that spot that we learned that the still pool is where the beaver den becomes known, that they hide out in their den so that they're safe from predators, so that they can eat in peace. And we enjoyed this hike immensely. And this dam story is a perfect part of nature. Beavers, this is what they do. But unfortunately, it's a part of our human story as well. We humans have a tendency to reshape nature to our liking, regardless of what it does to the other plants and animals, regardless of what it does to other human beings around us. We build roads, we pave over wetlands, we use more than our share of natural resources, we dam up the world around us in a wide variety of ways. And we also literally make dams that destroy the natural flow of rivers. Take the Elwha River in Washington State as an example. In 1911, 2 dams were built to provide hydroelectric power to create electricity to generate the logging industry in that region. No matter was paid to the fact that it was home to 400,000 salmon who would swim 70 miles up that river to spawn each year. Fast forward 100 years, and in 2011, 400 salmon could make their way through that dam up that stream to spawn. From 400,000 to 400. And after 20 years of political conflict in that region, finally, the Elwha Ecosystem Restoration Project began to take apart those dams that had stopped up that river for 100 years. And in 2012 and 2014, both dams were removed, and by 2015, so in just 3 years, all 5 different kinds of salmon were found reappearing in that same river once again. All the silt that had accumulated over 100 years behind that dam flowed out, creating a beautiful delta where otters and seabirds and crabs now live that before was just a trickle of water that was let down. Friends, what happens when we create literal and metaphorical dams in our world? We stop the natural flow. We interrupt the order that God created for our world. We take the word dominion that is in our creation story to mean dominate, rather than the original intent of the Hebrew word rada, which really suggests caretaking, nurturing, not exploitation. The Hebrew word suggests that we should care for our world in the same way God cares for us. Dams are our selfish ambitions, our desires to do more and more, to only think of ourselves and no one else. Dams are our casual disregard of other human beings as we move forward to better ourselves. Dams are our focus on ourselves first and foremost. But God calls us to build bridges rather than dams. Paul, in his letter to Philippians, makes this perfectly clear. He says, "Be of the same mind, having the same love. Do nothing from selfish ambition, but regard others as better than yourselves." Friends, we won't build dams that block others from living fruitful lives, be it the birds in the trees or the homeless person down the street, if we are regarding every living creature as better than ourselves. Paul continues saying, as if that wasn't clear enough, to say, let each of you not look to your own interests, but to the interests of others. God calls us to build bridges rather than dams. Bridges connect us. Bridges tie us together. Bridges keep us strong. Bridges consider the interests of the other, not just our own selfish interests. Bridges make us all better. In thinking about our natural world, bridges are even now being built to help animals to safely get across roads or under railroad tracks. Take a look. God has created us in God's own image and calls us to care for our world, to care for one another as God cares for us. And so God calls us to build bridges, literal bridges, like the ones we saw, metaphorical ones, in all that we do, rather than building dams. The hands that we have examined this morning are able and capable of love, of hands that can care, hands that can build bridges rather than dams. May we live into the vision that God calls us to, the vision that God has created us for. Unique, hands built for the work God calls us to do. Hands to build bridges. Thanks be to God. Amen.